Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we are diving into a political and legal showdown that has all the ingredients of South African drama: Jacob Zuma, the MK Party, the SABC, and a heated fight over words. Yes, you heard me right, words. Specifically, two little words: Government of National Unity. It sounds harmless, right? But according to Zuma and the MK Party, this phrase is not just misleading, it's unconstitutional, politically loaded, and could end up shaping how millions of South Africans understand their government. So, here's what's happening. On August 20th, the Supreme Court of Appeal, that's the SCA, handed down a decision granting Zuma and his MK Party permission to appeal a ruling by the Gauteng High Court. The High Court had dismissed their case against the SABC, and in response, Zuma's team said, "Hold up, that judgment is not only wrong, it's dangerous." Now the SCA has agreed to let them argue their case at a higher level. The heart of the matter is the SABC's decision to keep calling the current coalition in power Government of National Unity, or GNU. To many South Africans, this might sound like a flashback to 1994, when Mandela pulled together all the major parties, ANC, NP, IFP, into one national unity arrangement. But Zuma and the MK Party are saying this 2024 coalition is nothing like that. In fact, they argue it's misleading to even compare the two. Why? Because the MK Party and a number of other opposition players are not part of this coalition. So, if you're listening to the SABC and you keep hearing GNU, you might think every big party is sitting at the same table holding hands, when in reality, half of them are outside the room throwing stones at the windows. Zuma's lawyer, Thabo Quinana, put it sharply in his affidavit. He said the High Court fumbled the ball by not even addressing the real constitutional issues raised. Instead, the judge turned the case into a philosophical debate about whether South Africans are entitled to hear only objectively accurate information. Judge Denise Fisher basically told Zuma and his party, the Constitution doesn't guarantee you a right to be shielded from contested narratives. But Zuma's camp says that misses the point entirely. They argue this is not about political spin, it's about the SABC's legal duty as a public broadcaster to give citizens accurate, impartial, and independent information. Think about it. For millions of South Africans, especially in rural areas, SABC is their only source of news. They don't have DSTV subscriptions or endless data bundles to stream news on YouTube. If the SABC is telling them that the government is one big GNU, they might believe that all major parties are inside that unity government. According to Zuma and the MK Party, that's flat out false, and it undermines their political rights under Section 16 and 19 of the Constitution. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The MK Party is not just nitpicking over words. They're arguing that this sets a precedent. If left unchecked, it allows the SABC to peddle political bias under the guise of neutral reporting. Imagine the public broadcaster framing political narratives in ways that shape elections, without being held accountable. That's why they're pushing this appeal so hard. They say it's not just about them being excluded, it's about constitutional principles and accountability in public administration under Section 195. Quinana's words were blunt: the SABC is peddling false, inaccurate, and biased narratives. He even warned that if this judgment is left unchallenged, it would be constitutionally abhorrent. Strong words, but that's the tone of this case. Of course, critics are rolling their eyes. Some legal analysts have said Zuma is turning this into another political battlefield because the MK Party thrives on confrontation. They argue that ordinary South Africans don't care whether it's called a GNU, a coalition, or a political mashup. What matters is whether this so-called government actually delivers services, creates jobs, and keeps the lights on. And given Eskom's track record, maybe we should be more worried about kilowatts than acronyms. Still, the MK Party insists this is about more than semantics. They've also taken issue with the principle of subsidiarity. The High Court argued they should be relying on broadcasting laws instead of going straight to constitutional claims. But Zuma's team says political rights are a different beast, and subsidiarity doesn't apply. If they are right, this could reshape how courts treat cases involving political speech and public broadcasters in the future. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Why does Zuma care so much about the phrase GNU? Well, it fits into his broader political strategy. Since leaving the ANC fold, Zuma has been hammering the narrative that the current government is illegitimate, that the ANC leadership has sold out, and that ordinary South Africans are being misled by elites. By attacking the GNU label, he's also undermining the unity image that President Cyril Ramaphosa and his coalition partners are trying to project. It's classic Zuma politics: question the narrative, delegitimize the system, and rally support by positioning himself as the voice of truth against the establishment. And let's be honest, it's also a savvy media move. Every headline about Zuma versus SABC gives the MK party oxygen. They've been struggling for recognition in the formal opposition space, and this fight keeps them in the spotlight. Now here's where the humor comes in. You know how South Africans love acronyms: ANC, EFF, DA, SACP, PAC, MK, and now GNU. But sometimes it feels like politicians spend more time fighting over acronyms than fixing potholes. At this rate, maybe we should call the coalition something more realistic, like GNU-ish, or even better, Government Not United. That might capture the mood of the country a little better. But jokes aside, this is a serious test case. If the SCA sides with Zuma, it could force the SABC to rethink its editorial language and possibly set new standards for how public broadcasters operate in a democracy. If the SCA rules against him, it will strengthen the argument that courts shouldn't interfere in editorial choices, and that citizens need to live with contested narratives in a democracy. Either way, the outcome could shape South African media law for years to come. So, what do you think? Is Zuma raising a legitimate constitutional issue here, or is this just another Zuma distraction strategy? Should the SABC be forced to drop the GNU label, or is it much ado about nothing? That's where we'll leave it for today. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the Zuma versus SABC battle, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into South African politics, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and as always, see you next time.